Well, hello, it's Kathy and Rosie Vesperina. And first, Merry Christmas. You're watching this on the 24th of December, which is Christmas Eve, and well and truly summer here in Australia. So Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, then happy holidays. And I hope you're having a nice break. So we've finished our appointment here in Terrigal, and now we have to get home. When we rode to Terrigal this morning, it was quite early. I can't remember what time my appointment was, but I think it was around 7:40 in the morning. But an hour and a half has passed, and now it's time to get home, and obviously the traffic will be a bit busier now. We're just riding along the esplanade. To our left is Terrigal Beach, and to our right, this enormous building is called the Crown Plaza. I think it's a chain. There's lots of Crown Plazas around Australia and around the world from what I remember, but it's a very popular one here. To get back in the direction that I have to go, because it's only a one-way street along the esplanade, we've kind of got to go around and do a bit of a loop. So we're going around the back of the Crown Plaza to then get back onto the esplanade to get back home. So Christmas is I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Christmas, actually. I don't love the commercialness of Christmas, spending lots of money on presents and the expectation that you spend a lot of money on presents and what have you. It kind of feels like it's lost the meaning of Christmas, unfortunately. But what I do love about Christmas is that I get to have all of my family in the one place. So I have 3 little treasures and 2 grand treasures, and we all do Christmas breakfast generally together. I think there's only been one time when we haven't done that, and that was when my youngest child was working over in Singapore and so couldn't be home for Christmas. Other than that, we have spent every Christmas morning together, and the tradition is that we have pancake breakfast. So I make the pancakes, I make the batter the night before and let it sit overnight in the fridge, then add a little bit more milk to it the next morning before we make them. And there's a lot of different options for pancakes in terms of the style, but for me, I like my pancakes thin, so they're actually almost a crepe, I guess people would say, because it's very thin as opposed to those really thick, chunky ones like you get at McDonald's. So very thin crepe-like pancakes, which we have several toppings. One of my favorites is lemon and sugar. Then my second favorite is Canadian maple syrup. Third, Canadian maple syrup with ice cream, and fourth would be with fruit. So we do a big bowl of fruit salad as well, so you can have fruit on your pancakes. So we have that and a little glass of champagne and orange juice for the kids, though they're adult kids, but the grandchildren are younger. And that's our Christmas breakfast. This year we are going to my daughter's house because she has a swimming pool. So after we eat breakfast, we'll have a swim in the pool, keeping in mind we are in beautiful Australia, and so Christmas time is the middle of summer for us. And it's always a bit of a hit and miss in terms of the temperature. Sometimes it's stinking hot and other times it's coolish. This year the temperature is forecast for 27 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that means in Fahrenheit, but it is warm. So we do that, and then that lasts a few hours, and then sometimes we hang around for a bit longer. I always do a bushwalk with my middle son Matthew, and we do that wherever he chooses. We do that for a couple of hours, even if it's stinking hot. It's part of his routine because he has autism and an intellectual disability. He's very much a routine boy, and so that's our Christmas routine. So that's the plan for Christmas Day tomorrow. We've finished riding through Terrigal now, and now we're heading up through to Erina and past the big shops at Erina. Yeah, the traffic isn't too bad. I mean, it's busy, but it's not too bad. I used to live to the left of here in the Erina area, maybe about nearly 10 years ago now, maybe 9, just to the left there. And I loved that location because it was very close to the shops and very close to Terrigal Beach. But it was also very expensive. And so we moved closer to the train station, which was a better idea because I commute to the city 3 days a week, the city meaning Sydney. And so it only takes me about 5 minutes to get to the train station from where I live now. But I actually prefer that Erina location. And I think I've mentioned in previous videos that I also lived in Kincumber, which was another favourite area for me. Just recently, because I recorded the video a little while ago, but I'm doing the voice Christmas Eve, we had some significant bushfires here. Summer and the Central Coast has a lot of bushfires. There's a lot of bush around us where we live, backs onto bushland, so it's inevitable that we have bushfires. I guess what frustrates me is when the bushfires are lit by humans. Obviously, if there are thunderstorms and lightning strikes and what have you, then bushfires happen as the course of nature, and we deal with that. But what frustrates me is that some people light the fires on purpose for whatever reason, and that is very frustrating. One of the things I thought about was, so close to Christmas, people lost their homes. I think about 12 or 15 homes were lost during the bushfire, and I think about the impact on those poor families that have lost everything. I have decided to do some training to be a volunteer for disaster recovery. I am a psychologist by profession, and as a psychologist there is a disaster recovery training program that you can do so that you can volunteer your time when these sorts of events happen to help people that have been impacted. So I'm looking forward to finishing up that training and hopefully doing some volunteer work when I can. I think for me personally, at my age, I feel a need or a sense of wanting to give back to the community. The community has helped me and my family out on various occasions, particularly here on the Central Coast over the past 30 odd years that we've been living here. So it feels only right that if you have the opportunity to give back to your community, you should. And so I will do that in the coming years. We are now on the other side of Erina. I've spoken a lot, haven't I, to get this far. We are heading through, I think Springfield is the area, and I was mentioning before about the bushland. You can see how much bushland is around just in this area as well. There's a lot on the coast, and it's part of the reason why I love living here, because we can swim in the beach and we can bushwalk in the bush if we want to, or hike. For those other countries that don't use the term bushwalking, hiking is the other term. So up through Springfield, the traffic is a little bit better now because I think we're past the start time of school. That period between about 7:30 and 9:30 is always chock-a-block busy everywhere, because people are trying to get their little ones off to school safely, and so lots of cars on the road. And in Australia we have zones in the vicinity of schools where you have to drop down to 40 kilometres per hour, just in case there's little ones running across the road to get to school, or hopping out of their cars and not looking at the traffic. So I personally think it's a fabulous idea. Got to keep those little ones safe. So up through Springfield towards East Gosford now, and this area also gets quite busy, but gosh, it's lovely today. Look how clear the traffic is. I think some schools also finish up early for the Christmas period break, or the festive season, holiday season. Most schools have around 6 weeks, the public schools in Australia, 6 weeks of school holidays. But for the private schools, so we have a few private schools, we have a few Catholic schools or non-denominational private schools, and they sometimes have up to 8 to 10 weeks of holidays. So that's a lot of holidays. It's great if you have a big holiday planned, you can go away. It's also more expensive. But if you, as a parent or a caregiver, don't have the same amount of holidays as your children have, it's a bit tricky trying to get care. I remember when my kids were little, and I obviously didn't get 10 weeks of holidays that I could take at Christmas. It was a lot harder to find care or to keep them amused. My children were at private schools, and so I think they had 8 weeks instead of the 6. So now we are Gosford area, going up this big hill which is 50 kilometres an hour. And when you come down the other side of this big hill, it honestly feels like a bit of a roller coaster. It probably doesn't look that steep in the video, but when you are riding down on Rosie, it feels very steep, and it's only 50, so you've 50 kilometres an hour, so you've got to put the brakes on, and then you've got to get up the other side. I used to be scared of this section when I rode it, but now I just feel really, I wouldn't say confident, but I feel really comfortable riding it. It's just amazing how quickly you become accustomed to riding. I mentioned in my last video that I was going to take a private lesson to learn how to ride a geared bike, and that is happening next weekend. So I'm partly excited and partly petrified. I've been watching videos. I've said in my last video I used to drive a manual car. It was a long time ago, and so I understand the concept, but anyway, we'll see how we go. Now this intersection has got a bit funky because it's 50 k's. Nobody does 50 k's through that intersection and up to these lights and the next lights, but they've put in a red light camera and a speed camera at that intersection, and so I think it's going to catch out a lot of people because everybody, if you're coming down that hill and the light's green, you just keep going, and it's going to be a bit of an issue. Up over my other hill that I used to be nervous about and not, this is another one that feels like a roller coaster, and I have to sort of really turn the throttle to get Rosie up and stick to 60 kilometers an hour, and then you roll down the other side, and there's a few little bumps. You don't notice it on the video because it seems to smooth it out, but there are some significant bumps that I almost feel like I'm going to get some air on if I'm not careful, and lift myself off the seat a little bit so it doesn't hurt my rear end. But anyway, we are close to home now. I don't know that I've mentioned that on the right there is a school, but what's interesting is all of that area on the left there is the school playground, but there is not a 40k zone on this road. It's only when you get around the corner that it drops down here to the 40k zone, so I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe because there's no entrance around that other part. Anyway, we are back home now. Thank you for watching. Have a very Merry Christmas tomorrow, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.